Have you ever noticed that toxic people don't fear loud voices? They fear quiet confidence. They don't run from people who argue. They run from people they can't manipulate. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop chasing approval, and stop reacting emotionally, everything changes. Today, you'll discover 7 silent behaviors that shift the balance of power without saying a single threatening word. These aren't tricks or mind games. They're habits that protect your peace, earn respect, and make toxic people realize they no longer control your emotions. Because the strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who has mastered themselves. One of the greatest misconceptions about strength is that it looks loud. We often imagine powerful people as those who always have the perfect comeback, who dominate every conversation, or who never let anyone challenge them. But real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. The strongest people I've ever met are usually the calmest people in the room. They understand something that toxic people rarely do. Your greatest power is your ability to control yourself. Think about the people who thrive on conflict. They don't simply enjoy disagreement. They depend on emotional reactions. Their influence grows every time someone loses their temper, becomes defensive, or desperately tries to prove themselves. If they can dictate your emotions, they begin to dictate your decisions. The moment they control how you feel, they start influencing how you behave. That's why emotional self-control isn't just about staying calm. It's about protecting your freedom. Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Most people's first instinct is immediate defense. They interrupt, explain, argue, or try to convince the other person they're wrong. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, what actually changes? In many cases, nothing. The conversation becomes louder, emotions rise, and both people leave more frustrated than before. The toxic person often walks away satisfied because they achieved exactly what they wanted. They pulled you into their emotional world. Now imagine responding differently. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You take a breath. You listen without rushing to defend yourself. You answer with clarity instead of anger, or perhaps you decide the conversation isn't worth continuing at all. Suddenly, the dynamic changes. The other person expected chaos but encountered composure. They expected insecurity but found confidence. They expected to control the conversation, yet they couldn't even control your emotions. This kind of calm isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one decision at a time. Every moment you choose patience over impulse, you're strengthening a muscle that becomes more valuable throughout your life. Just like physical fitness doesn't come from one workout, emotional resilience doesn't come from one difficult conversation. It develops through repeated practice, especially when it's hardest. There's an interesting truth about confidence that many people overlook. Truly confident individuals don't feel the need to win every argument because they aren't trying to win approval. Their identity isn't built on being right all the time. It's built on knowing who they are, regardless of what others think. That inner certainty creates an incredible sense of peace. And peace is something toxic people struggle to understand because they often rely on constant conflict to feel significant. Consider leaders who remain calm during moments of crisis. People naturally trust them, not because they have all the answers, but because they don't allow fear to make decisions for them. Their calm becomes contagious. Others begin to settle because they see someone who isn't ruled by panic. The same principle applies in everyday life. Your emotional stability influences every relationship you have, at work, at home, and within yourself. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. Emotions are valuable signals. Anger can reveal injustice. Sadness can reveal what truly matters to you. Fear can encourage preparation. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions, but to prevent emotions from becoming your master. There's a difference between feeling anger and allowing anger to decide your next move. One practical habit is learning to create a small space between what happens and how you respond. In that tiny pause lies enormous power. A few seconds of reflection can prevent hours of regret. Instead of asking, How do I prove them wrong? Ask, what response aligns with the person I want to become? That single question shifts your focus from winning the moment to building your character. Another important realization is that silence can sometimes be the strongest response. Not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every insult requires a comeback. Sometimes refusing to participate is the clearest demonstration of confidence. When you no longer feel obligated to react to every opinion, you begin living according to your own values instead of someone else's expectations. People often believe emotional control makes them appear weak or passive. In reality, it requires extraordinary discipline. Anyone can explode in anger. Anyone can lash out when hurt. But remaining composed while facing criticism, manipulation, or disrespect requires maturity that few people possess. That's why calmness is often mistaken for weakness, until people realize it cannot be manipulated. Over time, toxic individuals begin to recognize that their usual tactics no longer work. They can't provoke you into impulsive decisions. They can't use guilt to influence your choices. They can't create unnecessary drama because you've stopped participating in it. And when someone realizes they no longer have access to your emotions, they lose much of the power they once believed they had. Ultimately, mastering emotional control isn't about changing toxic people. You may never change them. It's about transforming yourself into someone whose peace cannot be stolen so easily. Because the moment you become responsible for your own emotions, instead of allowing others to control them, you discover a quiet kind of strength that speaks louder than any argument ever could. One of the quietest signs of confidence is the ability to stop explaining yourself to everyone. Many people spend an incredible amount of energy trying to make sure they are understood, accepted, and approved of. They explain every decision, defend every choice, and justify every boundary. At first glance, this seems reasonable. After all, don't good people communicate? Yes, they do. But there's a difference between communicating with people who genuinely want to understand you and constantly defending yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Toxic people often take advantage of this difference. They ask endless questions, not because they are curious, but because they are searching for weaknesses. Every explanation becomes another opportunity for them to criticize, manipulate, or create doubt. They don't want clarity, they want control. The more you try to convince them, the more they shift the conversation, forcing you to defend another choice, another opinion, another part of your identity. Before long, you find yourself trapped in a conversation where you're constantly proving that you deserve respect. The truth is that confidence doesn't require constant validation. Think about someone who knows exactly who they are. They don't feel the need to announce it every day. They don't argue with every critic or respond to every accusation. Their life becomes the evidence. Their actions speak with far more authority than their explanations ever could. Imagine planting a tree. Every single day you dig it up to prove that it's growing. What happens? You interrupt the very process you're trying to demonstrate. Personal growth works the same way. Every time you stop to seek approval from people who refuse to support your journey, you interrupt your own progress. Instead of investing energy into becoming stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled, you're spending that energy trying to convince someone else that you're already enough. One of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that not everyone will understand your decisions. Some people won't understand why you change careers. Others won't understand why you ended an unhealthy relationship, started a business, chose solitude, or decided to prioritize your mental well-being. If your goal becomes making everyone understand, you'll spend your entire life chasing something impossible. Strong people recognize that misunderstanding is sometimes the price of authenticity. They accept that being true to themselves may disappoint those who benefited from the old version of them. That's not selfishness, that's growth. There is also tremendous power in allowing silence to do its work. Silence often makes people uncomfortable because it removes the opportunity for unnecessary conflict. Toxic individuals expect immediate reactions. They expect long messages explaining your choices. They expect emotional speeches defending your actions. But when those explanations never come, they lose the script they were hoping to follow. Silence isn't about giving someone the silent treatment. It's about refusing to waste your energy where it won't create understanding. Sometimes your peace deserves more protection than your opinion deserves expression. Consider how many successful people face criticism every single day. If they attempted to answer every negative comment, defend every rumor, or justify every decision, they would never have time to accomplish meaningful work. Their focus remains on creating value, not managing everyone's perception. They understand that reputation is built through consistency, not endless explanations. This doesn't mean becoming distant or refusing healthy conversations. There are people in your life who deserve honest communication. Family members, trusted friends, mentors, and colleagues who approach disagreements with respect. Those conversations strengthen relationships because both people seek understanding rather than victory. The difference lies in intention. Healthy people ask questions to connect. Toxic people ask questions to control. One habit that changes everything is learning to replace the phrase, "I need them to understand," with, "I need to remain true to my values." Those two goals lead to very different lives. The first depends on other people. The second depends only on you. As your confidence grows, you'll notice something remarkable. The urge to explain begins to disappear. You no longer feel responsible for correcting every misunderstanding or defending every decision. Instead, you trust that the people who truly know you will recognize your character over time. You become less concerned with being liked and more committed to living with integrity. There's a quiet freedom in realizing that your worth is not determined by how many people agree with you. Approval can be comforting, but it cannot become your foundation. If your confidence rises and falls based on someone else's opinion, then your peace is always in someone else's hands. The people who have the greatest influence in life rarely waste time convincing everyone they're right. They invest that time becoming the kind of person whose actions naturally earn respect. They lead through consistency, humility, and quiet confidence. Over time, the noise fades, the critics move on, and the results begin to speak louder than any explanation ever could. When you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, something extraordinary happens. Your energy returns. Your mind becomes clearer. Your decisions become stronger because they are guided by purpose instead of approval. Toxic people notice this change immediately. They realize they can no longer pull you into endless debates or emotional defenses. And in that moment, they lose one of their most powerful tools, while you gain something far more valuable: your peace, your confidence, and the freedom to live according to your own convictions rather than someone else's expectations. Self-respect is one of those qualities that cannot be borrowed, purchased, or given by someone else. It is built quietly, through the choices you make every single day. Many people spend years chasing respect from others, believing that once enough people admire them, they will finally feel valuable. But the truth works in the opposite direction. The respect you receive from the world often reflects the respect you already have for yourself. When you know your worth, you naturally teach other people how to treat you. When you don't, you unknowingly invite others to decide your value for you. Toxic people are exceptionally skilled at recognizing insecurity. They pay attention to hesitation, self-doubt, and the constant need for reassurance. If they notice that your confidence depends on compliments, approval, or acceptance, they quickly realize they have influence over you. They understand that someone who questions their own worth can often be manipulated through guilt, criticism, or emotional pressure. But when someone possesses genuine self-respect, those same tactics begin to lose their power. Think about a house with a solid foundation. Storms may shake the windows, rain may beat against the walls, and strong winds may test its strength, but the structure remains standing because what supports it cannot be seen from the outside. Human confidence works much the same way. External praise is like good weather. It feels pleasant, but it cannot be your foundation. Your foundation must come from something deeper. The quiet belief that your value does not change simply because someone else fails to recognize it. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing self-respect with arrogance. Arrogance says, I'm better than everyone else. Self-respect says, I don't need to be better than anyone to know I deserve respect. Arrogance seeks attention, while self-respect seeks integrity. One depends on comparison, the other depends on character. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your self-respect. Every promise you break weakens it. This is why confidence isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built in ordinary ones. It's built when you wake up and follow through on your commitments, even when no one is watching. It's built when you keep learning after making a mistake instead of giving up. It's built when you choose honesty over convenience, discipline over excuses, and growth over comfort. These seemingly small decisions accumulate over time until they create a person who trusts themselves completely. Many people underestimate how important self-trust really is. If you constantly tell yourself you'll change tomorrow but never do, your mind begins to doubt your own words. Eventually, your confidence disappears because you've taught yourself that your promises don't matter. But imagine the opposite. Imagine becoming someone who consistently follows through. You say you'll exercise, and you do. You say you'll set healthy boundaries, and you keep them. You decide to leave unhealthy situations, and you actually walk away. Every action becomes evidence that you can rely on yourself. That kind of confidence cannot be taken away by criticism because it is based on experience, not opinion. Toxic people become uncomfortable around individuals who trust themselves. Why? Because manipulation depends on uncertainty. If they can make you question your instincts, they'll often influence your choices. They may tell you that you're overreacting, that your standards are too high, or that your feelings aren't valid. They hope you'll abandon your own judgment in favor of theirs. But someone with strong self-respect listens carefully to advice without surrendering their identity. They remain open-minded, yet they are not easily controlled. Another important part of self-respect is learning to say no without feeling guilty. Many people believe kindness means always saying yes, always helping, always sacrificing. But kindness without boundaries eventually becomes self-neglect. Every time you ignore your own needs to satisfy someone else's unhealthy expectations, you quietly communicate that your time, energy, and well-being matter less. Over time, that message becomes a habit. Not just for others, but for yourself. Healthy boundaries are not walls that keep good people out. They are doors that allow respectful people in while keeping manipulation outside. They communicate something simple but powerful. I value myself enough to protect my peace. Surprisingly, the people who become most upset about your boundaries are often the ones who benefited from your lack of them. Self-respect also changes the way you respond to failure. Without it, failure feels like proof that you're not good enough. With it, failure becomes information. Instead of saying, I am a failure, you begin saying, that attempt failed, and now I know how to improve. Your identity remains intact because it isn't attached to temporary outcomes. This mindset creates resilience, allowing you to recover faster and continue growing while others remain trapped by fear of judgment. As your self-respect grows, something subtle but profound begins to happen. You stop chasing relationships that constantly drain you. You stop arguing with people who refuse to listen. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You become more selective with your energy because you recognize that your peace is too valuable to trade for temporary approval. Eventually, toxic people notice the difference. Their criticism no longer causes you to panic. Their attempts to guilt you no longer succeed. Their approval no longer feels necessary. They realize they are no longer dealing with someone who seeks permission to exist confidently. They are dealing with someone who has already made peace with themselves. And perhaps that is the greatest form of strength anyone can develop. Not becoming fearless, not becoming perfect, but becoming so grounded in your own values that no one else can define your worth for you. When your identity is rooted in self-respect instead of external validation, you become incredibly difficult to manipulate. You no longer need to prove who you are because your life quietly reflects it every single day. One of the most powerful lessons you can learn is that people rarely remember what you promised, but they always remember what you consistently did. Words are easy. They require very little effort. Anyone can make impressive promises, talk about big dreams, or claim they have strong values. But actions demand commitment. They require discipline when motivation fades, integrity when no one is watching, and patience when results are slow to appear. That is why actions always carry more weight than words. Toxic people often rely on words because words are flexible. They can flatter, manipulate, confuse, and distract. They may promise change after hurting you, only to repeat the same behavior days later. They may speak confidently about loyalty while acting selfishly behind your back. They understand that if they keep talking, many people will focus on the message instead of the pattern. But wise people learn to observe behavior rather than speeches. They understand that character is revealed through consistency, not conversation. Imagine meeting someone who constantly says they value honesty, yet every week you catch them telling small lies. At first, their words may sound convincing, but eventually their actions expose the truth. The same principle applies to your own life. If you want people to trust you, respect you, and believe in you, don't focus on saying the right things. Focus on repeatedly doing the right things. Over time, your actions become your reputation. This is especially important when dealing with toxic individuals. Many people feel the need to explain why they deserve respect or why they should be treated differently. They enter long conversations hoping that the perfect argument will change someone's behavior. But respect rarely comes from arguments. It comes from consistency. When your behavior clearly communicates your standards, there is very little left to explain. Think about someone who says they value their time. If they constantly allow others to interrupt them, cancel plans without consequences, or ignore their own priorities, their actions contradict their words. But someone who quietly protects their schedule, honors their commitments, and respects their own boundaries sends a much stronger message without ever needing to make a speech. Their behavior teaches others what they expect. Consistency also builds something incredibly valuable: credibility. Credibility cannot be demanded. It must be earned through repeated actions over time. Every promise you keep, every responsibility you fulfill, and every challenge you face with integrity adds another brick to the foundation of trust. Eventually, people stop questioning whether you'll follow through because your history has already answered that question. One reason many people struggle with consistency is that they become addicted to the excitement of starting instead of the discipline of continuing. Starting a new goal feels inspiring. Finishing it requires perseverance. Anyone can be enthusiastic on the first day. The real test comes weeks or months later when the excitement has disappeared. This is where character is built, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet repetition. Consider the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation comes and goes. Some mornings you wake up feeling energized. Other mornings you don't. If your actions depend entirely on your emotions, your progress will always be unpredictable. Discipline, however, creates stability. It allows you to move forward even when you don't feel like it. Over time, discipline produces results that motivation alone never could. Toxic people often become uncomfortable around disciplined individuals because discipline cannot easily be manipulated. Someone who keeps their commitments regardless of external opinions is difficult to distract. Gossip loses its influence. Criticism loses its emotional impact. Temporary setbacks no longer become excuses. Instead of reacting to every distraction, disciplined people remain focused on the bigger picture. Another important truth is that success itself becomes a form of communication. You don't need to announce every achievement or constantly prove your value. Quiet progress often speaks louder than loud self-promotion. Imagine two people. One spends years talking about what they plan to accomplish. The other spends those same years quietly working. Eventually, one has stories while the other has results. The world pays attention to results. This doesn't mean seeking success to impress others. The healthiest success comes from personal growth, not public recognition. When your focus shifts from proving people wrong to becoming the best version of yourself, everything changes. Your actions become driven by purpose instead of pride. Ironically, this quiet confidence often earns far more respect than constant self-promotion ever could. There is also freedom in allowing your actions to answer criticism. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding requires an explanation. Sometimes the most effective reply is simply continuing to live according to your values. Time has a remarkable way of revealing the truth. While others remain busy talking, complaining, or creating drama, your consistent actions gradually establish a reputation that words could never build. People who truly understand leadership know that influence is earned through example. Family members, friends, coworkers, and even strangers pay closer attention to what you repeatedly do than to what you occasionally say. If you want to inspire confidence, become dependable. If you want to inspire trust, become consistent. If you want to inspire respect, let your daily habits reflect your deepest values. Eventually, toxic people recognize that they can no longer distract you with arguments, empty promises, or emotional games. They realize your attention is focused on building something meaningful rather than proving yourself to them. And that realization changes everything. They lose the ability to control your direction because your life is no longer guided by their opinions. It is guided by your principles. In the end, words may create first impressions, but actions create lasting legacies. Every quiet act of discipline, every promise you keep, every boundary you maintain, and every value you consistently live out becomes part of the story your life tells. Long after conversations are forgotten, your actions remain. They become the evidence of your character, the source of your credibility, and the silent strength that no toxic person can ever take away. One of the most misunderstood forms of strength is the ability to walk away without creating drama. Many people believe that leaving a toxic situation means you've given up, admitted defeat, or allowed someone else to win. But in reality, knowing when to walk away is often one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. It takes far more wisdom to protect your peace than it does to win an argument that changes nothing. Think about how often people stay in unhealthy situations simply because they want the last word. They continue arguments long after the truth has been spoken. They revisit old conflicts, hoping that one more explanation, one more message, or one more conversation will finally make the other person understand. But toxic people rarely seek understanding. They seek engagement. As long as you remain emotionally invested in the conflict, they continue to have access to your attention, your energy, and your peace of mind. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Unlike money, time cannot be earned back. Every minute spent arguing with someone determined to misunderstand you is a minute that could have been invested in your growth, your family, your health, or your purpose. Successful people understand that protecting their attention is just as important as protecting their finances, because attention determines the direction of their lives. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks. At first, you may not notice the weight, but after walking for miles, every step becomes harder. Toxic relationships work in much the same way. Every unnecessary argument, every manipulation, every cycle of disappointment adds another emotional burden. Eventually, you become exhausted, not because life itself is difficult, but because you're carrying weight that was never yours to begin with. Walking away is not an act of weakness. It is an act of wisdom. It is recognizing that not every invitation deserves your acceptance. Just because someone invites you into conflict doesn't mean you have to participate. Just because someone chooses negativity doesn't mean you must abandon your own peace. Many people confuse walking away with avoiding responsibility. The two are completely different. Avoiding responsibility means refusing to address problems that can be solved. Walking away means recognizing when a problem no longer has a healthy solution because one person refuses to participate honestly. Healthy relationships involve two people working toward understanding. Toxic relationships often involve one person constantly giving while the other constantly takes. One of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that you cannot change someone who does not want to change. You can encourage them. You can support them. You can communicate honestly. But you cannot force growth upon another person. The moment you accept this truth, you stop carrying the impossible responsibility of fixing everyone around you. Instead, you focus on becoming responsible for your own actions, your own choices, and your own future. There is also tremendous courage in setting boundaries without hostility. Walking away doesn't require revenge. It doesn't require public announcements or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes the strongest exit is the quietest one. You simply stop participating in conversations that drain you. You stop returning to environments that consistently damage your well-being. You stop allowing people repeated access to parts of your life they have repeatedly failed to respect. This kind of quiet confidence often surprises toxic people. They expect resistance. They expect emotional reactions. They expect endless debates. What they don't expect is calm distance. When you leave without creating chaos, you remove the conflict they depended on to maintain influence. Suddenly, their usual strategies stop working because there is no audience left to perform for. Walking away also creates space. Space to heal, to think clearly, and to rediscover yourself. Many people don't realize how much of their emotional energy has been consumed by unhealthy relationships until they step away from them. It's like leaving a room filled with constant noise. At first, the silence feels unfamiliar. But eventually, you realize that the silence isn't empty. It's peaceful. It's in that quiet space that clarity returns. Another important truth is that your future depends just as much on what you leave behind as on what you choose to pursue. Growth is not only about adding better habits, stronger relationships, and greater opportunities. It's also about removing the influences that continuously pull you backward. A gardener doesn't simply plant healthy flowers. They also remove weeds that compete for nutrients. In the same way, protecting your future often requires letting go of people, habits, and environments that prevent you from becoming who you're capable of being. Walking away is especially difficult when you've invested years into a relationship, a friendship, or even a career. Human beings naturally want their investments to pay off. We tell ourselves that if we just try a little harder, things will improve. Sometimes they do. But sometimes persistence becomes attachment, and attachment becomes a barrier to growth. Wisdom is knowing the difference between perseverance and unnecessary suffering. Perhaps the greatest gift of walking away is that it reminds you where your true responsibility begins and ends. You are responsible for your character, not someone else's choices. You are responsible for your integrity, not someone else's opinions. You are responsible for protecting your peace, not sacrificing it to satisfy people who have no intention of respecting it. Over time, something remarkable happens. Toxic people begin to realize they can no longer control your emotions because they no longer have unlimited access to your life. They recognize that you are no longer willing to exchange your peace for their approval or your future for another pointless argument. And that realization often unsettles them more than any angry response ever could. In the end, walking away is not about escaping life. It is about choosing a better one. It is choosing purpose over conflict, peace over chaos, growth over resentment, and self-respect over constant emotional exhaustion. The strongest people are not those who fight every battle they encounter. They are the ones who know which battles are worth fighting, which ones must be left behind, and who have the quiet courage to keep moving forward without looking back. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is reaching the point where their happiness no longer depends on the approval of people who never truly wanted the best for them. So many people spend years chasing acceptance, trying to fit into circles that never appreciated them, changing their personality to avoid criticism, or sacrificing their dreams to keep everyone else comfortable. But the truth is this: the moment your life depends on someone else's approval, you've handed them the power to control your emotions. Real freedom begins when your purpose becomes greater than your desire to be liked. Toxic people often survive by making others emotionally dependent on them. They want you to question yourself before making a decision. They want you to seek their validation before taking a risk. They want you to feel guilty whenever you prioritize your own growth. Why? Because a person who is constantly seeking approval is easier to influence. Every compliment becomes a reward. Every criticism becomes a punishment. Over time, your confidence rises and falls based on someone else's opinion instead of your own values. Now imagine living differently. Imagine waking up each day with a clear sense of purpose that has nothing to do with proving yourself to anyone. Your attention is focused on becoming healthier, wiser, kinder, and more disciplined. Your energy is invested in meaningful work, genuine relationships, and personal growth. Suddenly, the opinions of toxic people begin to lose their importance because your life is already moving in a direction that excites you. Purpose has a remarkable effect on the human mind. When you know why you're doing something, distractions become easier to ignore. Think about an athlete training for a championship. They don't stop every morning to ask whether everyone approves of their workout. They don't abandon their goal because a few people doubt them. Their attention stays on the finish line. In the same way, people with a strong sense of purpose don't waste their lives trying to convince everyone they're worthy. They simply continue moving forward. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or ignoring the people who genuinely care about you. In fact, living with purpose often makes you more generous because you're no longer drained by the constant need for validation. When your emotional tank is full, you have more patience, more compassion, and more energy to give to people who truly deserve it. Healthy relationships grow stronger because they're built on mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. Another important truth is that fulfillment rarely comes from being admired. It comes from becoming. Many people chase status, popularity, or recognition, believing these things will finally make them feel complete. Yet history is filled with successful individuals who achieved fame while remaining deeply unhappy. Why? Because external success cannot replace internal peace. Recognition may satisfy the ego for a moment, but purpose satisfies the soul over a lifetime. Purpose also changes the way you respond to setbacks. Without purpose, obstacles feel like reasons to quit. With purpose, obstacles become part of the journey. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to learn, rather than a reason to doubt yourself. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What can this teach me?" That shift transforms failure into growth and disappointment into wisdom. Building a meaningful life requires intentional choices. It means investing time in habits that strengthen your mind and character. It means surrounding yourself with people who encourage honesty, growth, and accountability rather than drama and manipulation. It means protecting your time from distractions that add noise but not value. Every book you read, every skill you develop, every healthy friendship you nurture, and every act of discipline you practice becomes another brick in the foundation of a life that no toxic person can easily shake. One of the most beautiful things about purpose is that it naturally attracts the right people. When you stop pretending to please everyone, you begin attracting individuals who appreciate the real you. Authentic relationships replace superficial ones. Conversations become deeper. Trust becomes stronger. You no longer need to perform to earn acceptance because you're surrounded by people who value your character rather than your ability to entertain or impress them. There will always be people who criticize your choices. Some will say you've changed. Others will accuse you of becoming distant or difficult. simply because you've stopped tolerating unhealthy behavior. Don't let that discourage you. Growth often feels uncomfortable to those who benefited from the version of you that lacked boundaries. Their discomfort does not mean you're making the wrong decision. Sometimes it's evidence that you're finally making the right one. Living with purpose also means accepting that not every door is meant to remain open. Some relationships end. Some opportunities disappear. Some chapters close unexpectedly. Instead of viewing these endings as losses, begin seeing them as space being created for something better. Every time you release what no longer serves your growth, you make room for experiences that align more closely with your values and your future. Eventually, toxic people notice something they cannot understand. Their opinions no longer determine your mood. Their criticism no longer changes your direction. Their attempts to provoke guilt no longer influence your decisions. They realize that your attention is invested elsewhere, in your mission, your family, your health, your faith, your dreams, and your personal growth. They no longer occupy the center of your emotional world because they have been replaced by something far more powerful, a meaningful purpose. And that may be the greatest silent behavior of all. Not arguing, not seeking revenge, not trying to prove anyone wrong, simply becoming so committed to building a fulfilling life that negativity no longer deserves your time. Because in the end, the strongest statement you can make is not through words, but through the life you choose to live. A life filled with purpose, integrity, discipline, and peace becomes a quiet reminder that true strength is never found in controlling others. It is found in mastering yourself and refusing to let anyone else's approval determine your worth or your future.